Well, welcome Geoff Lee to the Digital Dialogue, the member for Parramatta, the Minister for Tertiary Education in the New South Wales Government, and as we've known him more recently, the defender of the Powerhouse Museum. Minister, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Chris, and thank you for your advocacy at Western Sydney.
I forgot to mention, and for an Eels supporter like how can I not mention you're also the Minister for Sport, which is a blessed role for all politicians to have. Minister, education sector, particularly export education, had a rough trot through COVID. While universities are sort of more regulated and funded at a federal level, you have the responsibility in the state government, including the trade benefits of these universities of international students coming in. New South Wales went its own way a few years ago to put its hand up to say we'll take the majority of the Syrian refugees and then house them in Western Sydney. Why can't we be a little bullish and say to the federal government, we don't want to be governed by national standards on this? Sydney is happy to go its own way and bring students back in before maybe the rest of the nation's ready for it.
Well, can I say, Chris, that it's international students are a valuable part of our economy and a valuable part of our university mix. I think, if anything, our universities should be very proud of their world standing in tertiary education and as a service export. In fact, it's the largest service export New South Wales has, some $15 billion. It's one that we often don't celebrate, and I think people don't understand that international students actually add a significant amount of money to every university. So there's been criticism of universities. We have 11 universities or 10 universities that the state holds the legislation for. Criticisms that they're concentrating too much on certain markets, but I don't think any university could predict, any of us could predict the 1 in 100-year pandemic, which would stop the international students studying in Australia and stop everybody coming to Australia just about. So I guess we've been working very closely with the federal government. The priority has been last year was really to overcome COVID, and in that returning Australians back home because of the limited quarantine facilities that the government made the decision to prioritise returning Australians, which I think was the right decision. As the vaccine is rolling out for Australia and the rest of the parts of the world, I think you'll see in time, and maybe it's in 2022, that we have the opportunity to bring back students. And in fact, I think it's been reported in the media that in fact we're looking at going above our normal caps to bring back students, put them in the quarantine, and then allow them to then continue their studies. I think, I'm the biggest champion of overseas students studying in Australia, but I tell you, we have to do it safely. And when you look at the numbers in terms of COVID, the community transmissions are very low. If we get a week where we get a couple of them in New South Wales, that's of concern. We don't. Where COVID is coming from.
3 months today, a 3-week holiday to Australia isn't a flash. You've got to spend 2 weeks in a hotel quarantine, but a 6-month, 12-month study trip, what better to be doing than knocking back the textbooks as you're sitting in the hotel room?
Absolutely. And when more evidence comes in about vaccinations and the effectiveness of vaccinations, we'll look at whether you can actually bring back people who are vaccinated to come safely back. But our primary concern is keeping Australian and New South Wales safe, return of Australians, and then how we can do it so that the federal government is satisfied with their visa requirements and we are satisfied that we can do it in a safe and orderly manner.
Let's flip to your other educational responsibility. In many ways, the more day-to-day job for you with regard to TAFE as a state entity. You've been both a celebrated student of universities, elected universities, and also a lecturer at TAFE. When you came into this gig, what background you got? What surprised you when you're on the other side of the ledger? For once, to go from student and teacher to minister is quite the jump. What special thing did you read as a result of that?
And Chris, you forgot to say my dad was a TAFE teacher his whole life.
Well,
so. Can I say that the biggest challenge for TAFE is, and I think all developed countries have this challenge, that the universities have been very good in the last 20, 30 years convincing students and parents that the number one option is to go to university. If you don't get any university, we'll choose option B, which is go into VET or TAFE. as we know it, and that we have to readdress that balance. So when you talk to developed countries' economists and in the education sector, most developed countries have downgraded their skills or vet sector at the expense of having enough qualified people coming through their trades and their skills-based employment. Similarly, we look at employers, some big employers looking at it and say, well, we don't need university qualifications to actually, for our staff, we actually need a mix of theoretical and skills-based, which isn't delivered at the moment. So generally you'd say vet sector, vocational education, training sector concentrates on skills. Typically we talk about apprentices and trainees, we all know those.
Unless your is operating on somebody, but yeah, it's the general sense. Most of the skilled employment sector is delivered by TAFE, not universities.
That's right, and that you see with the tradespeople, that you see, but increasingly it's a nursing, allied health professional, it's business, it's marketing, it's a whole range of other courses that people as well do. Can I say that, you know, at university they say they're all theoretical, and I'm, as the minister responsible for universities in the state, that yes, we love to support them, but there are a lot of skills-based professions like medicine, or medicine is actually a skills-based thing with a lot of theoretical knowledge, and so is being a lawyer, and that's why the practical component is so important. So I think the difficulty that we have as a state is how do we encourage our young people to actually make an informed choice in year 10 to study subjects that, or choose a career in the vocational education area. We know that only 40% of students will go to university. That leaves 60%. How can we give those young people that opportunity to make an informed choice about what excites them and interests them, rather than try and shoehorn them into a system where they may not want to be academically focused?
So like you, I spent time at Western Sydney Uni, 8 years on the board, and I chaired call it the marketing and engagement committee of the board. And I oversaw that magnificent ad with Deng Adut that spoke about the WSU. The UN got him out, Western Sydney brought him in, and won awards all around the world. Every time I did something more to market the joint, I kept thinking, this is taking kids off TAFE. How do you've got a brand new, fairly new CEO in Stephen Forby with a background in customer service, right? How do we make TAFE sexier? How do we have it not just being plan B and taking away the curriculum stuff? How do we just make it a fun thing for young people to want to be part of again, like it used to be when I was a kid?
So I think what we need to do is work backwards and say that, and we ran a pilot this year. Next year we'll expand that pilot to about 100 high schools. We've got 24 high schools in our pilot this year. It's actually informing the students, their parents, the careers advisors, the principals and industry about the opportunities VET have. So you start at year 7, you do it year 8, year 9, and by the time you reach year 10, then they make their informed choices in terms of what subject selection. At the moment, people tend to game the system in terms of choosing the subjects that will maximise their HSC and ATAR results. Therefore, they will not choose VET subjects.
Yeah.
We've got to give students the opportunity to do VET subjects that actually contribute, if they choose to, an academic pathway or vocational education pathway. And that's why we're starting next year in the TAFE 20. It's 20 subjects that can allow you contribution to your HSC and ATAR, but also subject to enough work experience will give you a certificate 3 in things like property. You can become a real estate, get your real estate license as long as you classifications whilst at school.
We do love a bit of property in the West.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Cybersecurity is another one. Allied healthcare is another one.
Well, why computer coding done at TAFE? Why would that have to be university? I mean, I think we have too many subjects that's got to be in university, which is rubbish. Computer coding, all tourism courses. There is so much I think TAFE needs to take back. To be honest, I don't think the matrons of Mosman need to be doing flower arranging courses on the taxpayer's coin. And I think it's completely correct. The government has the right post-pandemic to favour federal and state governments to favour courses that bring the skills exchanges by price. I think that's appropriate during this period. But it's the way we can maybe integrate, as you're saying, high school learning, Hawkey's policy, kids had to hang around till 17, it's actually distracting some kids who want to do theoretical education. How best do we integrate all of the TAFE, school and university into what should be a seamless lifelong education?
So the wonderful thing is, because we have the Education Minister and I work very well together. We're in the same cluster. In fact, we're bringing in our skills portfolio into the high schools. So it's not the poor orphan anymore that's sitting in the corner, but it's actually the part of the system. People can choose an academic pathway, they can choose a vet pathway, or they can choose a blended approach.
The Gonski-Shergold report, or as we say in the West, the Shergold-Gonski report. I love that you had two university chancellors looking at the future of TAFE. What are the quick takeouts? How's the world changed as a result of that pretty important review being handed to you?
I think three most important things. Number one would be the pathways that we allow students to make informed choices, year 10 and onto year 12, reintegrating it into Department of Education so it becomes a choice of what inspires the next generation. Number two would be our development of institutes of applied technology, with the pilots being Meadowbank for IT and Kingswood for advanced construction. Looking at between what you do in a skills-based vet TAFE environment to a university, and actually have a unique blend of skills based on theoretical knowledge. So I think those pilots will be an interesting way that you don't always need a vet degree or a higher ed degree. You can actually have the perfect blend. And the difference between those is that industry will be part of the design, delivery and assessment of those courses, so that we actually become the leading edge of those courses, rather than we decide we want to develop a course, 5 years later out pops the course, it's already out of date. And the third thing, if I can, is Careers New South Wales, the ability to offer professional coaching of people to say, what is the right course, what are the right industries to go into for a particular person, and then giving them professional advice, whether you're looking for your first job, whether you're looking for a new job or a better job. It provides that holistic service to the individual, so that, you may have been dislocated out of, say, the airline industries. You have a whole skill set. What is appropriate? Where is the growth industries for the future? And how can we actually move you to that position? And where is the gaps? What courses you may need to do? And we can advise you on that.
From a Western Sydney perspective, one of the great successes of WSU, the most important institution in the region, I think we'd all accept what it's done for us. Part of it is it's a local management, a local board looking at local issues. Is there an element, say, using a discrete region of TAFE in Western Sydney? There's probably no region in the state more relevant to TAFE than is Western Sydney, that it gets a little bit of local celebrity, local endorsement, local flavour that can integrate it, because I think that integration, it's not just the curriculum, it's the integration of the institution with the region to give it that level of import that the university model that other unis around the country are chasing WSU on. And maybe we could, now the WSU and TAFE are mates again, because they weren't a few years ago, and there's now a very good close working partnership, joint facilities at Kingswood, the Aerotropolis and other things they're doing. Maybe there's even more sense that us in Western Sydney can provide a bit of cover support for the regional TAFE offering.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great idea. Chris is bringing our local identities to promote. We're reconfiguring our TAFE board and our skills board to actually be champions of VET and TAFE respectively. So you'll see further announcements about how we're going to bring that together. But absolutely great idea to have champions of the West who live and breathe Western Sydney to actually champion what's in the regions and how we can do it better. I mean, the advanced construction is particularly important if you really think about it. I mean, where are all the builders? Western Sydney. Where are all the companies? But I always say that the difficulty, if there's one criticism I have of industry in general, is I'll sit there every week and listen to industry associations or big employers say, you're not producing enough graduates in whatever, insert hospitality, building, construction, tourism, and a whole range of just about every industry we have critical skill shortages. The reality is, at the moment, we rely upon the government and the individual to actually go and do a course and become qualified, then get some experience. Then the employer actually goes and then puts an ad in the paper or on Seek or online, and then finds a suitably qualified student, and they bring them into the firm.
In Germany, they jump in earlier, don't they? The German model,
industry take the inherent responsibility to say that the next generation of workers has to be developed by our company. And so they bring them in early and then train them, and their actual managers are actually people that start on the shop floor rather than the people that are parachuted in at a different level.
You've got a supporter in that. So anything we can do to move both those ideas forward to bring in, I think, be really successful. You're also.
I think one of the areas that we'd love to do is work on our skill-based apprentices. Queensland has 10,000. We have around in New South Wales 2,800. Now
that's a state of origin loss.
That's absolutely Well, we should be doing 20,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, students 1 day on the job, 1 day learning, at a TAFE, for instance, and 3 days at school.
I've got to compliment you on TAFE, the great project that's put in place where TAFE went into the workplace, where they set up colleges, particularly the building sites. And when it's raining, the apprentices, the green hats, go down and do their TAFE training on site. It was a great program. I know I struggled a little bit in the middle there, but it's a really good program, and we're constantly telling our guys get involved with, to go and see TAFE. So I think there is the momentum there. I think the things you've spoken about, we'll try to bring it home. Now, you're also the member for Parramatta, and expanding Parramatta. By the time of the next state election, I think you'll have lost some of your maybe safer political regions up around north of Pennant Hills Road, the Dundas and Oaklands and Epping end of the electorate, and you pick up a bit of Olympic Park, which is currently in the seat of Auburn. It's nominally going to make it a little more marginal. You've pretty much taken a marginal seat and made it safe, so you become a darling of the Liberal Party. This is a bit of a challenge to that. So you approach Olympic Park as a newbie to that community after the next election, if you succeed there. What are your outsider views of the park now and the precincts, the Wentworth Points and Carter Streets, Newington, and that sort of community? The other side of Camellia, where you currently pull up stumps.
So they're a high-end concentration of apartment-style living, which presents opportunities and challenges. And certainly with the densification, Parramatta is a good example. Densification, you provide good services, good retail, good entertainment, good cultural aspects, good transport. I think we have to focus on the issues that are annoying the people that have moved in there. Transport, road network, particularly important for those people. I think we have to encourage SOPA to actually, which is in Rob Stokes's agency, how that can develop as a jobs hub. I think we have plans for 25,000 jobs in that area. I think my focus for Parramatta has always been, number one is jobs, create jobs in the area, and people can stay and work and live in the same area and bring up their families in the same area. I think we've achieved that through Parramatta. I think the opportunity for Olympic Park, as I've always said, that Parramatta, Camellia and Olympic Park will eventually in another 50 years merge into one economic zone together. And I think as long as it's anchored by transport, which provides not just transport, getting people from A to B, but it's actually an economic driver of where jobs are located and where people then decide to live. And
so that people have been knocking on your door about light rail stage 2.
Well, absolutely. I'll go on record as my comments as a member. I'm certainly a strong proponent of Parramatta Light Rail Stage 2, as I was of Parramatta Stage 1, a $2.4 billion investment.
There with you for the launch with Mike Baird in Geoff Park one day, as he announced that the light rail was coming and going to Olympic Park. That's not yet there. We have, with the council, put to government maybe in the meantime, and I recognise there might be some argument if it's pre or post metro. I accept that's an argument to that. Also accept we were promised a ramp off WestConnex Hill Road, which has now been taken away as well, and we still got the world's worst roundabout. So, and we don't yet have the bridge across from Melrose Park. So there's a few transport things there. But one thing we have put to government is maybe it's a beeline bus in the meantime, a Parramatta to Olympic Park loop, bringing up Parramatta Road or Victoria Road, which could at least fill in that link between Parramatta and Olympic Park until the light rail comes along.
So you're absolutely right, Chris. There are several options that we consider, and I'll certainly be pushing those as hard as I can, as soon as I can, in terms of working with the Transport Minister and the Premier in terms of what we need to make sure that we provide great services for that community.
It's always been a little bit unloved in cabinet. No one's been the single champion for Olympic Park. Ministers have come and gone. Is it sport? Is it tourism? Is it planning? It's all sorts of things. A local member would be handy. So in that perspective, and a local member who actually likes the area would be handy as well. So we wait and look forward with anticipation to your championing. Speaking of championing the West, you championed the powerhouse in a pretty tough environment. I remember one Sunday night being pretty much told, I've got to back off Olympic Stadium because Geoff wants the powerhouse. We only have one, and that seemed an appropriate way to defer to you, sir, to get the powerhouse up and going and put the stadium off for another day. We've all accepted maybe Willow Grove has to be, it's an expensive compromise, but it's there, and I haven't got hand on heart. I think it's of lesser historical importance, and in a place like Parramatta, the third most heritage proud city in Australia, Willow Grove is no Hamilton Cottage, it's not Elizabeth Farm, it's not the orphanage. But are you comfortable now we're over the hurdle? There's no more industrial legal NIMBYism that's going to deny the kids of Western Sydney the museum they deserve?
Look, I think the powerhouse, and I'm certainly the number one supporter. It was a promise given back 5-6 years ago, and on the sale of the Poles and Wires assets. I'm going to hold my government accountable for that delivery. It is one of two projects. The light rail will transform Parramatta in terms of its connection between Westmead, Parramatta, and Talopia in those areas. And the second one is the Powerhouse Museum. Not only that it'll attract 2 million people a year, which will boost the visitor economy, but in fact, what it does is give every child in Western Sydney the opportunity to experience arts and culture and to be inspired to become the next generation of mathematicians, scientists, astronauts. Access to arts and culture is limited in Western Sydney. It's all right for the do-gooders in the eastern suburbs and inner city saying we should have all the toys. Half of Sydney lives west of Parramatta, and those people in Western Sydney should be given the opportunity.
Yeah. As you know, what we share, your father, a TAFE teacher, my father, a former member for Parramatta federally, and pretty good pork barreler for the old pig butcher. One of his bestowings was original Parramatta Stadium, which have since upgraded, but also the Riverside Theatre as a bicentennial gift from the feds back in the day. Are you as confident that, say, the Riverside and the Roxy will get a bit of love, that other cultural part of the city the hardest working theatre in Australia, that Riverside is? So.
Look, I think the reality, 2 years ago, we're in a very different economic climate. We're looking at trying to get more money out of the state government, get more money out of the council for a $300 million development. I think we have to bite the bullet. We've got $100 million. Council's being paid $100 million for the redevelopment of the theatre. My strong advice to council is just go and do it and stop talking about it. That eventually you need to do something. The Roxy's a slightly different kettle of fish. It's in private hands. We've tried to, as I understand it, negotiate with the current owners. It is a heritage asset that there's not a lot you can do with it, make it into a space for arts such as, a performing arts. It's got a few issues. We're trying to make sure that we can build a metro around it so we don't.
Maybe there's a solution through the metro if Metro's acquiring property in the car park. Importantly, it's the place where I saw Star Wars in 1977. So,
Chris, because you saw Star Wars there, we should spend $100 million on the purchase. You're exactly right. Yeah, I didn't think of that. I might go to the treasurer and say, Chris Brown saw Star Wars.
It was wonderful. So, thank you. Just in closing, it's you're not only the Minister for Sport and Tertiary Education, member of Parramatta. You are a living, breathing example of modern Parramatta, of mixed Irish, Scottish and Asian heritage, Chinese heritage. Parramatta now, it's the Parramatta I grew up in isn't the Parramatta of today. It's much more dynamic. It's better educated. It is much more multicultural. We've seen 3 waves of communities through Harris Park in my time. The Greeks became the Lebanese, became the Indians. It's the city with the second highest number of PhDs in the state. I think outside Birchgrove as a suburb, it's quite remarkable. As the living, breathing embodiment of it and a good representative, how do you take the pulse of a Parramatta community, if not an economy, a community now?
I would suggest I'm very fortunate to have a highly aspirational community that accepts change, that that my focus has always been on creation of jobs. By the time another 2 years goes past, we would have moved 12,000 public servants to Parramatta. In fact, we'll take out half of Parramatta Square, which has enabled council virtually to finish off the square.
Despite Elizabeth Farrelly writing last week in the Herald that Lane Walker destroyed Parramatta with development of Parramatta Square.
I wouldn't like to verbal people, Chris, but maybe we can have an offline conversation about that. Can I say that, you know, that it's a modern, vibrant city. Its future offers, you know, jobs for people, and jobs are the number one requirement to live a decent life. Can I say that the next important thing is housing? Leave the housing market up to people who build, the developers, the private sector. We don't need to do that. The third thing is that we need to focus on now, and I think we're up to that point. We've reached critical mass. We're accepted as the central city, that we need to build our arts, culture and sporting infrastructure to make sure the quality of life is exceptional.
Amenity to match productivity.
Absolutely. So whether it's the Powerhouse Museum, whether it's our sporting fields, whether it's our stadiums, whether it's our riverside theatres, whether it's the dining options, whether it's the entertainment options, whether it's our walkways, our cycle paths, our parks and gardens, I think that quality of life, so that, you know, the end outcome will be if we can say that I choose to live in Parramatta because it's a great city. I choose to live in Parramatta because it has great educational facilities and great sporting assets and great green parks and waterways and job opportunities. And
a metro that'll have it 20 minutes from the city on brand new sparkling train tracks. Well, in closing, Minister, I hear a little birdie tells me that governance in Parramatta might get a reform, that maybe your party might be pushing for a direct elect Lord Mayor of the city of Parramatta. It's something I think is probably long overdue. Are you comfortable with the level of government below you?
Look, I think there's always a natural tension between state governments and local councils as federal government. I think it can be healthy. That I would suggest to you that we probably have too much governance in Australia.
Everyone agrees, just no one agrees which one should go.
That's exactly right. I would suggest to you that I'm focused on Parramatta as the elected member for 10 years and my agencies rather than the governance of this. We saw what happens when we tried to merge councils together, and I don't think that's a healthy debate that we need to pursue.
Yeah. Well, so only finishing saying 2021, Minister, year of the Earls, the great Parramatta team, my not since '86. On your watch, we have to get a premiership.
Exactly. We've put them a stadium.
You've given them a great stadium to win in. Thank you, Geoff Lee. Thanks for your time. So good luck and Godspeed.
And thank you for your support of Western Sydney and all the important initiatives, whether it's the Powerhouse, whether it's the university, whether it's TAFE, or actually making it the employment hub that we really need and understand. So thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Geoff.